Ay, ay, ay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Timothy Kawaliga, and I'm here to present the characteristics of clustered settlement pattern and scattered settlement pattern. Uh, First of all, I'll begin with clustered settlement pattern. Uh, Clustered settlement pattern has centralized community facilities. Uh, Whereby they have a central area where essential community facilities are located, for example, schools, hospitals, community hall, and the other one, clustered settlement pattern, has social cohesion, whereby the close-knit nature of clustered settlement fosters a strong social ties among residents. And the third one, houses are densely packed around a central point in clustered settlement pattern. And it also has a compact shape, whereby its shape is round or in an oval shape settlement pattern. And it has also mixed land use. For example, the other land is used for residential, the other one for commercial and relocational land use. And on the other hand, let me shift to scattered settlement pattern. Scattered settlement pattern has a low population density as houses are in scattered positions, and it also has individualized location whereby people build single houses in different locations, and it has also limited shared facilities as what as the social services like schools and hospitals are mostly far from where people settle. And it also has only single land use whereby people use the land maybe just for building their houses, and it is associated with a modern suburban development. Yeah, that's all on both scattered and clustered settlement pattern.
So to add to the cluster in the past origin, it was mostly intended for self-defense. So in case you have maybe a crowd, some neighboring ethnic group, or you have an enemy around you, so you prefer to take control for maybe they'll build a high wall around the whole city or the whole village to protect themselves. And so typically, the farms are also located far from the area of residence. Did you already mention that? No? And you are going to find this a lot more in the urban areas than in the rural areas nowadays. So, yeah. Any questions? As for the scattered settlement pattern, so this is typically found in the rural areas where naturally people people from the same family occupy an area and they're within or they're very close to their own farms. So the that on the farm, then their own land, higher area. Then you walk a distance, you also find something similar. However, the Moti or Kalamoti, and they're very close to their farm area where they so next is the advantages.
Yeah. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to talk about the advantages of cluster settlement patterns and the advantages of scattered settlement patterns. I'll start with the cluster settlement patterns. The first advantage is there's easier access to services. So as my colleague already started, he said that they're close to some infrastructure such as schools, hospitals, and some office blocks. So it's very easy for you to access these places instead of being like very far from each other. So it's very easy to access these services. The second advantage is reduced transportation needs. Since everything is very close and compact, it's very easy for you to access these places. So you do not need a large amount of transport funds. So most of the times you can just walk to these places. Thirdly, is security and safety. As our teacher already said that it's very safe for like people to be living in these cluster settlement patterns. This is because, for example, if someone were to come and steal like a car from your house, since people are very compact and close to each other, there's a high chance that people can actually see if someone were to come steal a car or anything from your house. Fourthly, there's enhanced community interactions. So this actually builds solidarity in a community. This is basically building a togetherness between the community members. Since you're interacting with them almost every single day, it's very easy for you to build a community with a strong bond. Lastly, on advantages, there's efficient land use. You may think of this as a disadvantage, but since everything is very close and compact, a lot of farm areas are very far from the area. So basically, you have a lot more land for you to farm instead of having farms next to your house. Now I'm going to advantages of scattered settlement patterns. The first advantage is that there's privacy and space. Since scattered settlements have a lot of space, people have a lot of privacy to like their own land. You're not forced to share a lot of these places with a lot of different people. So you have a lot of privacy and a lot of space. Second advantage is the flexibility in land use. Since you have space now, instead of being close and compact to other citizens in your community, you have more or less a right to use your land for your own purposes and your own uses. Thirdly, the decreased population and pollution. So basically, in a scattered settlement pattern, there's less cars, less noise pollution, and less air pollution because of the less cars and less road networks. So basically, there's decreased pollution. Fourthly, there's land preservation. For example, if there's a natural disaster to happen, for you to recover a lot of these things, it will be easier for you because this is a more scattered area, so there's less land or less property damage in that area compared to a clustered settlement pattern whereby there's more damage done to a larger number of people if a natural disaster happens. And lastly, there's reduced overcrowding. This means that there's more opportunities for people in that area because there's not that much competition for resources and other amenities in that area. Yes, and that marks the end of my presentation. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for him? We can have numerous advantages for either. I think you have explained well on the advantages. Um, One other advantage would be the easier transmission of information or on technologies or innovations in a clustered settlement area. So within a short period of time, you can relay information on an important innovation or technology or something that has come up that is an emergency. Or rather, in a scattered settlement pattern, it will be much costly to ensure that everybody has acquired um, time time conscious information. So that's one more advantage. So while on the scattered, one particular advantage would be that you have plenty of room for any other proper town planning or development work or rebuilding or restructuring you'd like to do. So unlike in a clustered settlement pattern, for you to develop, you might have to demolish certain structures, but in a scattered area, you have plenty of space to develop or modernize an area. So it gives room for expansion easily. Yeah. So if there are no other questions, you can come.
Morning, Chris. My name is Blessing Nkweleza. I'll be presenting on disadvantages and of scattered and clustered settlement pattern. So I'll begin with um, clustered settlement of pattern. The first disadvantage is that there is high rate of criminal cases since um, the area is overpopulated, so it does contain uh, people of different kinds, such as fish. Yeah. The second one is there is pressure on infrastructure and resources. And on this one, we may be the witnesses. We can take an instance of uh, when we can take an instance from searching a house for rent. For one to get a house in um, clustered apartment, it takes um, time and energy since the areas are mostly overpopulated. The third one is that plots may be too small to be economically viable. Since the most part of the land is occupied by houses and some other infrastructures, um, This reduces land um, for farming and the other activities. The fourth one is overpopulation. In clustered settlement pattern, we may find that the areas are overpopulated due to certain reasons, maybe uh, the presence of social amenities in that area. So if that area has these social amenities like electricity, water, and even good health facilities, the area can be overpopulated. Finally, um, people are vulnerable to diseases. In clustered settlement pattern, diseases um, are easily transmitted within that area. We can take an example of cholera. In most cases, cholera is common among this type of settlement. So in clustered settlement, people are more vulnerable to diseases. Now I'll go to scattered settlement. On scattered settlements, my social amenities are few in those areas because people don't have social contact to uh, they don't have social contact to 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 call for such amenities like electricity, uh, water, and many other amenities. The second one, people in scattered settlements are prone to robberies. In most since in scattered settlements, like Timothy has said, people they stay far from each other, so people take advantage of them since they are defenseless. The third one is people live in isolated. People lives in isolated huts. Uh, this one is commonly found in rural areas where people they stay um, far from each other and they do not have well-built houses, so they tend to stay in huts which are not well built. Um, Lastly, people lastly, people in scattered um, scattered settlement pattern are usually hit by high prices for some resources. We can take an example of maybe cooking oil and the sugar. In scattered areas, mostly people are hit by high prices for these kind of commodities. Any question on the disadvantages of scattered and clustered? No?
All right, thank you for that. That was wonderful. I think for for the disadvantages, what I would like to add is that the clustered settlement patterns does not encourage. I think you already mentioned something concerning this gardening or having small farms that you can easily cultivate and maybe having a mixture of crops and livestock. So mixed farming does not encourage mixed farming. If you're living in maybe this area, I think one of the laws is that you shouldn't have livestock ngari ng'ombe or mbuzi because it will disturb your neighbors. So in a clustered area, you find it very hard to have a mixed type of farming, and even find it even harder maybe to have small gardens and all that. So while on the scattered settlement pattern, one of the most unique disadvantages would be that the people are relatively psychologically isolated from everyone. So it does not encourage issues like social togetherness, social what? Solidarity. So if you're in a scattered settlement pattern, you're most likely going to be doing things as a unit, as a family, and it would be even harder for you to combine resources with the rest of the community. While a clustered settlement pattern would have it much easier for them to come together in terms of solidarity. And one other notable disadvantage would be that if there is research, maybe you going there to do a survey or to find out about something, for you to identify the boundaries, it will be much harder for purposes of research. While in a cluster settlement pattern, it might be easier to say that this is one area, and then after you cross this river, you find another area. After you cross this road, that's also another part. So those were the clustered and scattered settlement patterns. So the other thing we should look at is village organization. How are villages organized in Malawi? So not village organization as in institutions, but just how does a village look like in Malawi? Typical villages in Malawi. So we can look at how villages are organized based on 5 things: the traditional structures, the physical layout, which we've sort of started looking at, the administrative organization, the cultural and social organization, and the modern influences. But then in Malawi, we typically note that villages are organized based on traditional customs and administrative structures. But also, they vary depending on the region, the cultural practices, and the level of development. So, first one, based on traditional structures. So, traditionally, we have 3 main structures we can take note of that are there in the villages. So, first off, chiefdom. So, villages in Malawi are usually part of a larger chiefdom. So, you usually have a chief or a village head if the area is smaller. And the chief is the one who is responsible for overseeing the welfare of the village. If there are any disputes, if you have to manage land allocations, if you're buying land, you usually go through the chief. So he gives his stamp of approval. Uda Malawa, agreed by this person, and these are the witnesses, and so on. Apart from that, we also find that we have clans and family ties. So villages are organized a lot dependent on the extended families or clans. So the strong kinship ties influence the layout and the social structure of villages. So if you're found that you're living in close proximity with a number of households, most likely you're going to be found living among your own clan or people. So families often live in close proximity and group together based on kinship. And then lastly, the elders council. So the chief has a council, advisors who support him and who are respected by the members of the village. So in case the chief goes away or is absent in the village at the time, then the headman can take over, or the respected members of the council can oversee whatever is happening in that village. But primarily, these advise the chief on important matters in terms of decision making. And then the other is the physical layout. So in most villages, there is usually a centralized feature where people meet, gather for, or as a marketplace or a community center. So most of the times, this place is usually very close to where the chief resides. It might be as a center, Bamudzibo. So the same way we have maybe BICC as our the center of this country. Good American. Hmm? Yeah. So BICC is like the center where we can all meet and all that if there's anything for this country. So even in a village, you also have my centers. The same way if you're looking at America, Times Square is as the center. I've forgotten what we actually call it. But then in a village, you have also a center where people meet. Maybe if they have a meeting, if they have to make a decision, or if there's somebody who has come into the village, wants to meet the people, then they can meet there. And then the housing arrangement is that a lot of people live in clustered, some in scattered. Depending on the size of the area, if you go to the north, you find that it's really scattered. If you go down south, it's highly populated. So, depending on the size of the area, you find that the housing arrangement is either scattered or clustered. And then the agricultural land. Usually, residential areas are surrounded by the agricultural land. If it's not agricultural land, if you look at a place like Likoma, then it's surrounded by the lake, which is part and parcel of agriculture. So each family has their own agricultural land. But of course, with the growing population, the land is becoming smaller and smaller. But typically, everybody in the village, Amakand Malolima. And for infrastructure, you usually find things like wells, a lot of boreholes, schools, and clinics might be centrally located. You might find that Panjigo, Divaskulu, the market is close to the hospital, and so on and so forth. But this is also highly dependent on the size of the land. If there is scattered settlement pattern, Dodis in Tuzi, they might also be scattered along the area. It might be very far from, school might be very far from other areas, while in clustered, these infrastructures might be very close, as you already said. So, administrative wise, we have three groups. So, as we already said, a village has the chief. The chief is the overseer of everything, responsible for day-to-day governance. What's sinaonemo. Sinaone. So the chief is the one who is responsible, overseeing everything day-to-day governance. And if there is any type of representation needed, when the government calls for a meeting, or private sector or the non-governmental organizations would like to have representatives for an area, then they would typically talk to the chief. If the chief, if not the chief, then the chief will direct. You just don't go straight. Or even if you want to go and do your own survey, you wouldn't just go direct to the people. You have to go first to the chief. Because I've even heard of stories that we know anasalira mudzi because maybe they didn't follow protocol. Or you went there at first we didn't do well mudzimu, but you didn't go to say I'm now going back home. So typically you go through the chief and you're supposed to say within I've done my work, I'm going back. And then within that village you find development committees. If it's in the agricultural sector, Ndoti, you also find a committee that oversees village development committees, VDCC, right? Yeah. So these development committees can be for specific projects like in agriculture, in health, or in the education sector. And these coordinate programs both from government and non-governmental organizations. So if you want to maybe implement a certain activity, then you maybe it's agriculture. Yes, you go through the chief, but you need also to go through the extension workers that side, and they will typically have a committee that oversees everything. The same way we have committees at district level is the same way we might have smaller committees at a village level. So they're usually called village development committees. And then under these we have village groups, where a village may be part of a larger village group, which consists of several villages under the leadership of a village headman. And this structure facilitates cooperation among neighboring villages on issues of common interest. So sometimes we have heard the word village group headman. So it means that yes, you have this one village, but that village is also a part of this larger area, and these ones can be known from one centralized chief, the village group headman. So this also enables for smooth implementation of different projects or provision of facilities. So the other thing we can take a note of is the cultural and social organization. Of course, we can say a lot on this, but we can just summarize it as usually Malawian villages are characterized by a strong sense of community. So strong sense of community where people work together, maybe during harvest, or they're building a certain project, school blocks, or in times of crisis, and on any other events. It can be my ceremonies, these traditional things like Ashinagule Wankul. That only shows that there is a high sense of community, that people like to come together, they work together, have fun together. So there is a high spirit of community, even in our dances, in our ceremonies, or our festivities. So the community plays a crucial role in development of individual human beings in the village. Without the community, it might be very hard for people to develop. So other than that, it is the church and religious institutions. Churches play a big part. Malawians, we are believers. A lot of us are believers. So religion plays a central role in our country. So whether you find a majority of churches or you might find a majority of mosques, that those churches or mosques play a significant role, as they are one of the most important social structure or centers for a community. So where people come together to socialize and share on their problems, it is usually the church and any other religious institutions. And lastly, it is the modern influences. So, with the passing of time, um, we see a lot of government and non-governmental organizations coming in. So, with the passing of time, the government and various NGOs often work together to provide different services in the villages. According to healthcare facilities, education, or any other infrastructural development. So this involvement can lead to changes in the traditional organization, especially as modern facilities and services are introduced. It can also lead to changes in cultural organization. So the other one is migration and urbanization. So migration is the movement of people from an area to the next. While urbanization refers to people moving from the rural to the urban areas, usually in search for work. So these are the modern influences, which with time we will see changes in how maybe culture or the traditional systems will be changing with time. So if we have Antu moving a lot from the rural to the urban, it will have my different dynamic effects on the social and economic structure of villages. So maybe a lot more people will start being independent. So my settlement pattern might even change. Or a lot of people might start relying on other means of finding an income. So how we rely on agriculture might change with time, and so on and so forth. Any questions so far? So next time we'll continue by looking at the regions and their characteristics, the three regions. Do we have 3 or 4 regions? Southeast Janjan is not a region. Okay, so yeah, next time we'll continue with the 3 regions and then we'll finish with the implications of these settlement patterns on development. Today is a day for submission of the assignment. Make sure I haven't received an excuse from anyone, so make sure you submit your assignment in due time. Mid semester ndiri? Next month. Okay. Is that right? How many weeks to go? 2 weeks. Oh, that's very close. All right, so you can come and sign. You've talked a lot today. One of them was promised. I don't know.